We are thrilled to have two folks really intimately involved, obviously, by his face on the screen, with Richard Linklater's film Boyhood. Matt Lankes is an accomplished photographer, local here to Austin, and in 2002, he was asked to take annual photographs of the cast of Boyhood to capture them throughout the film process, and he just released his book, Boyhood, 12 Years of Film, featuring his photos and some writings from the cast in his time. And then joining Matt today is Ellar Coltrane, so also an Austinite and a star of the movie Boyhood. We're so lucky to have them both, as their crazy schedules on the award circuit have kept them pretty busy over the past few weeks, so we're excited they could stop here with us today. They were nominated for 6 Academy Awards, and they just won several Golden Globes, something that I think all of us here in Austin are pretty proud of. So leading the conversation with Matt and Ellar today is Chile Nafis, who's Director of Programming at the Austin Film Society. Thanks so much for coming, and without further delay, here are the guys.
I'm curious, how many of you have seen Boyhood? If you haven't, lie, please. Okay. No, that's great. I think then you're going to really enjoy this and learn a lot. All of us have seen probably countless films in which a main character grows up. Often that character is played by a person at 6, one at 12, one at 18, 3 different actors portraying that particular character, and we've gotten accustomed to that. What Richard Linklater has done is completely unique, taking Ellar Coltrane, filming him and others over a 12-year period, portions of each year. So we literally see Ellar grow up on screen. So when he came through the door, I didn't even recognize him today. He continues to evolve. So let's just start with the question you're always asked. How did you get involved with the project? Richard has actually said that he thought you had a very ethereal mind, and he was fascinated with how you thought as a young child. So tell us how that happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I had to guess, he saw a like mind. That's a lot of, I mean, Richard has a really hands-on casting process, and, you know, is much more interested in kind of getting to know people than he is in like how well you can memorize a page and a half of, you know, dialogue. And so that's kind of what, you know, I had been auditioning a lot. I did a lot of theater when I was really little, and had gotten a position with a talent agency in town when I was like 5, I guess. I had one small part in a movie called Lone Star State of Mind that was filmed here, and when I was 6, I got the audition with Richard, and it was very just, I mean, I think there were probably 6 or 7 callbacks, but he didn't have a script for me to read or anything, so it was just kind of a conversation. You know, I think he had me bring in art that I had made and talk to my parents, obviously, and we just kind of bonded for a couple weeks, and that's, you know, kind of everyone on the set that's kind of his relationship. You know, it's very kind of about being friends and being able to collaborate together first before anything else.
Taking the role, they encourage you, I assume, because they were going to be part of this for 12 years.
Yeah. I mean, I think my parents, you know, have always kind of struck a good balance of supporting me, but not being like the dreaded stage parents that are, you know, trying to live vicariously through their child. So they were I mean, they love Richard's work, and so they were definitely excited. But also, you know, it was definitely a long decision, because it is a big commitment, and no one wanted to push me into it, so.
Matt, you came in at year 2, photographing on the set and taking portraits and all that. Tell us how that came to be.
Sister, Kathleen Sutherland, was the producer and actually production coordinator on the second year, and then she hired me on to do stills. And early on, I saw an opportunity to do portraits, which is one of my favorite things to do, or portraits of people. I do stills once a year, maybe on a film or a commercial. So to have that opportunity present itself and know that I was going to as long as Kathleen was on the movie, I would be on, because nepotism is alive and well here. So when I took the opportunity to make these portraits, this is actually one of the first portraits I made, was actually of Ellar, and just very simplistic, black and white on black background, and I just wanted to continue that every year.
We're going to discuss the portraits in greater detail in a little while. Ellar, there's a tendency for a lot of viewers to almost think this is your life in one way or another. I have several questions, try to distinguish or to show where there was some overlap between you and the character Mason. It's a narrative film, not a documentary, but I think at times there must have been elements of you. The film opens with you looking at the sky, daydreaming. Were you a daydreamer as a child?
Absolutely.
Oh, good. I'm glad. That's why you got the part.
There's this interview from like year 1 or 2, I think, that we unearthed that is probably maybe it's on the DVD. I don't know, but. And when it opens, there's a good like 30 seconds where I didn't know we were filming, and I'm just kind of like muttering to myself and just like looking around and just kind of like, and then he's like, Ellar, and I'm like, oh, hey.
My niece stared out the window for 12 years at public school, and she's an artist also. So, your character Mason is very interested in animals and nature. Is that true of you?
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. We'll just go through these quickly. We'll have a checklist. Your older sister, Samantha, is played by Richard Linklater's daughter, Lorelei. And for the most part, y'all have standard sibling animosity on screen in many ways until you're older. Do you have any siblings, and how is this?
I mean, I have a 9-year-old sister, so it's a very different relationship, but Lorelei also has younger sisters, so I think that relationship formed pretty naturally, that we both kind of wanted a sibling and were able to sort of, obviously we didn't live together, but we were able to sort of fill that role, and we're at each other's throats instantly.
Right, okay. When she sang, "Oops, I Did It Again," I wanted to throw all the pillows at her and make her stop.
In Lorelei's defense, the song she wanted to sing, I think, was "Gentlemen Prefer Blondes." She's a little cooler than that.
That's great. All right, Patricia Arquette, your film mom reads Harry Potter to you. Were you a Harry Potter fan as a child?
I actually wasn't. That was one thing that I... Like going to I never went to any of the book openings, so it was
Thank
surreal,
God.
right?
I was worried about you in that scene. I thought, there's no way that's Ellar. That is Mason being told to do that.
Definitely.
Okay. Ethan Hawke, as your dad, tries to get you interested in sports, football, baseball, bowling. Did you have to do about 100 shots to bowl so badly?
I don't think so. I think I'm just pretty bad at bowling. We did like a photo shoot recently where we kind of recreated that scene, and I didn't do much better.
Finally, on this part, in the film, Mason goes through 12 years of public school. You were primarily homeschooled. How did you feel? I think you went to high school for a while, public school.
Yeah, that's definitely the biggest kind of difference. Is that because my social dynamic was very different growing up, and so yeah, and that was also one of the most interesting parts of having this sort of parallel story tracing my own life, is getting to kind of go and like pretend to be in these school situations, which was very foreign to me. So, but obviously something that most of my friends were in school, so it was always this, I was very aware of this environment, but getting to go kind of pretend for a couple days was pretty interesting.
So Matt, after you started with year 2, did you go to the set every day of filming, or how did you decide when to go?
Yeah, I was the on-set photographer, so I was shooting stills of the action of the film, and then also behind-the-scenes shots, which are going up every now and again over there. So I was basically documenting the way the film was made, Richard directing Ellar, Richard interacting with Patricia, Lorelei, and Ethan when Ethan was on set. And what I would do is each year I would pick a day that I knew all the actors would be on set. Most of the time they were, but sometimes it would overlap by a day or two. And I would choose a location nearby set and make my portraits on the one day. And once I got everybody documented for that year, I wouldn't necessarily do the portraits on another day of shooting that particular year. Does that make sense?
Everything you're saying makes sense. How do you manage to be almost invisible as the still photographer on set? How do you manage to be almost invisible, not obtrusive at all?
Well, you have to get a good relationship with the first AD who's leading all the action, which is Vince, and then also with the other cameramen and the ACs that work on the camera, assistant camera, because you need to be right next to the camera, getting similar shots. But sometimes I would float around and just, Ellar got comfortable with me real quick, and that was great. If I was in Patricia's eye line or Ethan's eye line, that would kind of disrupt things. So you kind of have to do exactly what you said, try to be invisible as much as you can and be low-key. And I'm kind of a low-key person, so it wasn't too hard to do.
Rick Linklater is very famous for the relaxed atmosphere on his sets. Did that help in some ways? Does the set atmosphere affect your film?
Absolutely, yeah. I've worked on sets where the director is not very nice, like Rick. And Rick is puts everybody at ease on the set. I've never heard him raise his voice once, literally. And Ellar might have, back when rehearsals or something, I don't know. But no, Rick is very easygoing, and it makes everybody else at ease. And everybody just does their work, and everybody's professional, and everybody knows that they all have a job to do, and that's what makes it come together cohesively. And that's what the beauty of this picture is that we put all this effort into it, and we have this beautiful body of work. So.
The photo you took of Mason getting his buzz cut, he's actually smiling or laughing. In the film, he's definitely not smiling at all. So that, in a sense, that gave me a different reading of that scene. I mean, obviously that was Ellar, whereas in the film it's Mason reacting that way. Why did you decide to print that one?
For that exact reason. I wanted to show that Ellar was actually quite happy getting his haircut during that scene. Or at least, I can't speak for him directly, but he seemed to be happy.
It's really hot here.
Yeah. So, yeah, Ellar was very happy to have his hair cut, but he had to play the scene, so I did a few takes where he was actually smiling, and that's one of the ones that I wanted to put in the book and have in the book, for sure.
And just a bit of technology, describe your equipment, your cameras, lenses, and all that.
Well, I started out shooting digital for the production stills and behind the scenes, which I knew was just going to change as far as pixels, but that would always be the same. And what I wanted to do so I use a digital camera, a Nikon, I shoot Nikon. Now for the film stuff, I originally started shooting on film on a Hasselblad, which is this image here. And then I had a Polaroid converted from a land camera that shot pack film Polaroid that had a positive and a negative. So I could look at the positive picture and know that I had the negative, and then I put it in the water and wash it later and I have a negative. And then as time wore on, Polaroid went out of business by about year 8, so I didn't shoot Polaroid anymore and had to go back to film, just straight 4x5 film. And the majority of the portraits are shot on a 4x5 camera that's a wooden field camera made in Japan called a Tachihara, with just a basic normal lens. And really, at the end of the day, it's an extremely simple camera that gets the subject involved with the process. And Ellar himself was great. He loved posing. I mean, I don't know if he loved it, but he was very amiable to me and to do it all. And then later on, Ethan would, after a couple of years of coming back, Ethan would go, "Oh, I love that camera," and then he'd be more, inclined to spend a little more time with me posing. Not that I would take them, for an hour at a time. And literally, I'd do the shoot in about 3 or 4 minutes. So it was a very quick process.
Okay, Ellar, back to acting. How did you and Rick actually work, say, in your childhood and later on, as far as action, line delivery, body language, facial expressions, all of that?
I mean, there's kind of an amazing, a lot of what Richard does. I mean, I assume for most of his movies, but definitely with this one is a lot of rehearsal. You know, the script is kind of constantly changing. You know, I mean, he would come to us, you know, maybe a week out before shooting and have, you know, a basic script, you know, scenes written for that year, and then we would spend the next week rehearsing and rewriting bits of that, and, you know, and taking things from our own lives. And, you know, like you were saying, there's a lot of, not just me, but all of us, you know, there's a lot of all of, you know, Patricia and Ethan as well in the characters and just in the world in general. And that rehearsal process was ongoing, you know, into filming. So there was little difference in kind of the atmosphere between rehearsing and filming. You know, we kind of joked that it's like a lot of times you don't even know. It's like suddenly you're just rehearsing, and then he's like, okay, we got it, and you're done. And that is kind of how it felt, you know. So, and that's an art, you know. That's something that when I was young, I wasn't really aware of, but that's an amazing balance to be able to strike, to make it to where you know there's no pressure of like, oh, I'm on camera. And especially when I was young, you know, it changed as I got older and, you know, kind of became more confident and aware of myself as an actor. But when I was 7 and when Lorelai was so young, that's really valuable, you know, to just be able to not feel pressured and not feel on the spot, you know, because I think all kids like to pretend, you know, and it comes really naturally. It's really easy to act when you're 7, 8, 9. But the problem is that a lot of kids are pressured, you know, you feel like you have to perform and be cute or, you know, try to please the people around you. And Richard did a really good job of making it, you know, making me feel like an equal and also just making me feel comfortable so that I was able to, you know, do what I had been doing for years. And I don't know, as far as like direction, it never felt like, I mean, he would say little things, but a lot of it was just kind of born out of the rehearsal process, you know, so that when we were actually filming, we already kind of knew what he wanted, you know.
Great. Was the scene with your alcoholic stepdad scary or fun? Because that glass or whatever breaks right in front of you on your plate. How was that?
Both, I think. You know, I mean, it was definitely exciting. There's not a lot of like real acting in the movie, and you know, something explosive like that is certainly exciting. You know, but I think, I mean, I think it was scary too. You know, it's the kind of thing that it's easy to ignore it when you're a kid, but looking back, it's like it definitely was an intense experience. But they also, you know, like Patricia would, you know, everybody would start kind of joking in between takes to sort of distract us, I guess, from the gravity of the content.
Since you would get together every year, how soon ahead of filming did you know what the basic actions would be for that year?
I mean, generally at the end of each year, Rick would give me some kind of idea of like, hey, you know, next year you're gonna go on this camping trip, or you're gonna meet a girl, or, you know, or whatever, and then throughout the year we would, you know, he would call me and take me to lunch 2 or 3 times and kind of just compare, you know, his whatever ideas he would have, and kind of ask me about what had been going on in my life, and, you know, see where the two might overlap. So I generally had a pretty good idea. You know, I had a lot of time to kind of think about that exactly, you know, what Mason was doing and how I could use my own experiences to kind of inform that. But then, like I said, a lot of times the final script, the final dialogue wasn't, you know, printed until the morning of the shoot.
Which would be maddening for many actors, but
if you're not a part of writing it, I mean, that's the thing. That's why, is because we had been rehashing it and rehearsing it for a week. So it's not like we needed to memorize. We already knew the lines because we were, you know, there when he wrote them. So it was definitely constantly evolving, but also very long form. It was a very long-term kind of process. For each, 15 minutes, we had a whole year to kind of rehash it and figure out exactly the right tone.
Matt, going to your portraits, your 4x5 portraits, which are really stunningly beautiful, what was your method of, did you direct the people or what?
Mostly, I would just kind of have them in character in front of my background, just looking directly at the camera. And if you've ever seen a 4x5 camera, it's a slow process, to say the least. It's the old camera where you have to put a hood on and look underneath on the ground glass and focus. So I would have Ellar stand there, or Patricia, or whomever, and I would say, okay, hold on, let me get focused. They would just kind of, look at the camera. I'd say, okay, hold still. I'm gonna drop the film. They're still looking still. I think what's captivating about a lot of these is that they really have an intense look right into the camera. As far as directing them, I didn't do much direction. Patricia's a wonderful professional. She didn't need any direction. I would say maybe after I did a couple of frames of just a straight expression, I would say, let's do one a little friendlier. She might let us a little smile in there. Ellar, I would do the same. Ellar would, we would go through a range of emotions and expressions, and mostly it was get the kind of the serious ones out of the way first, and then go into whatever, hanging out, whatever, looking at camera. Pretty simple.
I need to get you to teach me how to smile for the camera.
It's
barely
easy.
Do that in real life. So if you're doing a lot of these 3 or 4 minutes, what is your shooting ratio? It's not very high, I think.
You mean
between the number of shots that you take and the final choice?
So for the 4x5 film, so there's 2 sheets on a back. You turn it over, and it's quite simple. But for Ellar, I would probably do 4 holders, 8 sheets, 8 shots. And then I would do all the digital shots, because I'm also having to be wary of their time away from set. So, and placate when they want to actually do the pictures. Like, some of them were a little more reluctant on having their pictures taken. Ellar was never that way. Patricia wouldn't want to spend, more than 5 minutes, just because she wants to do other things. Ethan was okay. He loved doing them. And Lorelei was fine as well. And I'm not trying to say Patricia was doing anything unprofessional. She just wanted to get it done and out of the way. She didn't want to linger like Ellar. So Ellar is interested in the photographic process, so that was nice to see and made my job easier. So.
Have you been tempted to do any time-lapse photos showing them age very quickly?
I did a very brief. I'm not very good at video editing, but I did a very brief little 30-second snip of all of these shots before we had the book, right as the film was releasing, and I sent it to Rick and Kathleen and showed it to them. Actually, I sent it to Ellar as well, and it was just like just that same thing that you've seen on some of the programs that they show before these guys go on and do their interviews. And I think it's fascinating to watch the faces change, for sure. I'm not very good at it, anyway.
Discussing the improvisation in acting, at what point did you and Rick start feeling free enough for you to improvise in certain scenes, and what were some of those scenes?
There was never really. There was definitely, there was definitely an element of improvisation to it because of the fact that the script was constantly changing, and a lot of times we would be improvising up until the morning of the shoot. But when we went on camera, we definitely always had a script that we followed, with the one exception of the Star Wars scene when Ethan and I are sitting at the campfire geeking out about Star Wars. That there's about 45 minutes of that, I think. 45. There's about 45 seconds in the movie, but there's another half hour probably of just us talking
DVD
about Star Wars.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well,
I hope
we'd love
so.
that.
But yeah, that's a common misconception. I think we achieved a lot of realism just through a lot of improvisation, just leading up to the to the shoot. So a lot of it is our own words, but it was always scripted.
The transition to teenager, I love the scene in which you're asking your dad, there's no magic in the world really, like elves and stuff. Had you already reached that point in your life, or was that a terrible revelation?
I don't think my parents, like, I think the way Santa Claus was presented to me was as a myth. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely believe in magic, but not that kind.
Great. When you're at a party with a girl, you tell her how you're unhappy with people trying to control you, which you're a teenager, nothing surprising about that. How does that mirror you at that time?
I mean, that was one of the first pieces of dialogue that I just wrote. So is exactly, I mean, Richard had come to me the previous year and said, you know, the next time you're alone with a girl for the first time, you like, take notes and, like, you know. So that is definitely my own pseudo-philosophy from 17.
Okay, great. That's a good year for that to happen. That takes care of the next question about emotional trauma. So let's see. By the end, you break free. You go to, I guess it's Sul Ross State University and Alpine, and then you go to Big Bend. It's a perfect place for your photography and love of nature and all. How well do you relate to Mason's decision to do that?
I mean, I love that place. I love that desert. It definitely, I stayed, I've spent a lot of time out there, you know, just in Big Bend, but after we shot, everybody else went home and I stayed for another, like, week or two. It's really special out there. And I mean, photography isn't as big a part of my life as it was. I mean, that's why Mason is a photographer, is because I was really interested in it, kind of as a result of, you know, following Matt around on the set and, you know, looking at all his cool toys. But that's, you know, but I definitely do relate with the need to get far away from home, and the, you know, the desert definitely calls to me. So that last scene is, you know, you know, more often I'm alone, but I've definitely had that moment, you know, many times in my life of just being out there and how quiet it is and just kind of realizing how, you know, how for granted I take everything.
Matt, this is a big question. How do you see the difference between the art of cinematography and the art of photography?
That is a big question.
Should have warned you.
I find myself, that's a hard one to answer. Moving pictures versus still pictures, we remember things differently when we see the moving picture as opposed to one still frame from that picture or that movie. So I was lucky enough to have Ellar and the whole cast to document during the 11 years that I was on the film. And I think my documentation is impactful, but I think the film is way more impactful when you see the moving images. But I think that's the beauty of the book, is that it pairs well with the film. And you can go back after seeing the movie and seeing everything and kind of land on a moment and land on a picture and remember that soft-faced boy and then see the chiseled man that he is now. You know, it's like, you know, I mean, he's a movie star, and it's incredible to watch the transformation. And I love that I was able to do that photographically, and Richard was able to do that cinematographically. So,
did you see a younger you in Ellar when he was interested in photography?
Actually, yes. There was one scene that we filmed at Austin High in the darkroom scene where he's getting the lecture from Mr. whatever his name is. Turlington. And he has that great line, which, you know, any dipshit can take photographs. You know, what are you going to bring to it? And I love that scene. That scene was really wonderful and powerful to me because that darkroom was the actual darkroom where I first learned how to develop film and make prints. So I was at Austin High. I was trying to tell Ellar that right before the scene, and we were just having a little moment about it. But it was fun to be there, and that was a pretty powerful moment for me, that darkroom.
From the very beginning, we see that you're interested in art. You have your graffiti symbol, which I still can't decipher when you were a child. But then you take on the name Kesjo for your bedroom wall. Art in general, graffiti in particular, what are your art interests?
Yeah, That was actually a replica of a thing I had on my wall, and mine was maybe a little more readable, but a little more decipherable, but or maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, I mean that's spray paint art was definitely a big part of my life at that point in time. And photography is something I don't shoot constantly the way I did when I was younger, but it's definitely still something I'm very interested in, and pencil and paper drawing and painting, and I don't really know how to play music, but there's definitely a lot of it inside of me, so I probably will someday.
Great. The beautiful book that has come out. How did this come about? I noticed you wrote, after a few years, I looked at the images collected so far and became excited by it all, looking forward to the final volume of work. So when did the idea for a book come out?
Well, the idea originally for me was the black and white portraits as a portfolio piece. It's not as a book. It was really, I was going to have this nice body of work, selfishly. I was obviously going to give Richard and Kathleen access to it so that IFC can use this, but that was the original intention with the black and whites. However, year 5, year 6, when I was counting up, I've got 4,000, 5,000 images, and then by year 12, I've got close to 18,000 images. It was a no-brainer early on to say, we're going to do a book. We have to. We have too many images, too much going on, and I think it was year 9, Ethan said, I want to write the intro to your book. And I was like, oh, I have a book? And I had never talked to Ethan about this. So that was my first little, light bulb moment that if Ethan's involved, and I knew Rick and Kathleen were kind of mulling the idea, but if Ethan were involved, then it would really have a lot more chance of playing out. So, and that's what actually led into the essays that each of the actors did, was Ethan talking about doing the intro. So Rick has the pseudo intro, but Rick was talking about the passage of time, and then everybody kind of touches on that. And so the book actually officially became tangible as an idea just this time last year, really. And it was very much a quick, we had 12 years to make the film, and we have like 2 months to make the book. It was kind of a quick process, but DJ Stout at Pentagram and Stu Taylor did an incredible job designing it, and then UT Press have done a remarkable job marketing the book and distributing it. So I hope that answers the question. Kind of long-winded.
And I'm really happy it's UT Press. So it's another product of Austin. I think that's great. What has been the reception to the book so far?
As far as I can tell, my 10 friends like it. So, I don't know. I'm kidding. I think it's doing very well. And it's hard. Books in general are a hard business. As Brady will tell you, it's difficult, but I think it's doing well. I just saw that it's at Costco now, so that might be a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know, but
tomorrow Walmart. Okay, sorry, no.
I draw the line.
A friend of mine at Barnes & Noble said it's selling very well too, and it will be available here today at a really nice discount. So we'll mention that again in a minute. So Ellar, summing up. Many of Rick's films have to do with time, and you, of course, get the last line of the film, it's always right now. Is that you, as well as Rick?
Yeah, in hindsight, I think it was kind of a message from Richard to me, because I had nothing to do with writing any of, in rehearsal, I helped to kind of tweak it and put it into, words that I was comfortable saying. But that definitely, that was, he knew what he wanted to say, and it definitely is, I understand that and feel it in a big way. And like I said, I think that moment that Mason's having of kind of, realizing the fleeting nature of reality, and how kind of easy it is to forget the importance of family and connection, and just how quickly everything's going by, and how easy it is to miss it, and just kind of get wrapped up in bullshit. We were all kind of having that moment out there, I think not just me, but everyone on the set. We were all coming to the end of this thing that had become, so much more meaningful to us than I think anyone ever, aside from maybe Richard, had ever expected, and realizing that it was over, and just kind of striving to appreciate the last few moments of the project and the last day of being together. So I got a little lost there, but yeah, I definitely that is me in a big way.
Can you even imagine your life without having this experience? Who would you be?
Yeah, absolutely not. I don't know. I mean, I've been, both of my parents are artists, and I've been around, just projects, in collaboration my whole life. So I would definitely be creating things, but I would be in a very different way had I not met Richard.
Do you miss being Mason, or are you ready to go on with your own life?
I mean, both. It's something of a relief, but it's also incredibly bittersweet. I mean, I just miss being able to work on it, But also, I mean, the blessing of all of this is, that how well the film has been received is just that we've gotten to spend the last year together, which had, no one cared about the movie, but probably, we wouldn't have a thing every weekend that we all get together for. So that's been nice, but definitely it's bittersweet. I hope we get to work together again.
Okay, I want to open it up to the audience for questions.
This, or that it would lead you to this, or what's kind of your reaction? It started off with limited release, and then it's obviously taken off. So
I mean, I didn't expect this a year ago. I mean, I think we were kind of bracing ourselves for no one to care. That sounds funny, but it's entirely true. I mean, for the last 12 years trying to explain this project to people, it's like, okay, Richard Linklater, like, oh, I've heard of him, and then it's like 12 years, and like it's not really about anything, and so people didn't care. People's like, oh, that's cool, but it's not like, oh, I'm so excited to see that movie. It's just like, okay, well, good, tell me about it when it comes out. So we really were kind of bracing ourselves for for no one to really get it or to connect with it the way, because we know it's really important to us, and that makes it all the scarier to kind of release it to people who may or may not understand it. But the way people have responded, I mean, much more than the awards and everything, that's really awesome to be recognized, but what's more meaningful is just the way people have responded personally and individually, and expressed such kind of vulnerable emotions, about that this movie has inspired them to feel, and that I think we all feel pretty vulnerable releasing, putting this out there because it's so kind of personal to us. But a lot of people, a lot of audiences have really matched that vulnerability. So that's really inspiring.
I heard an interview with Lorelei Linklater on Texas Standard, and her reaction to the film and seeing it after the whole project was complete was quite strong. She described crying watching the movie and feeling some, I guess, how strange it was to see different parts of herself on screen for the public in earlier parts of her life. I wondered what your reactions were to hers and if you related to it at all.
Before Sundance, Richard gave both. We hadn't seen any of the footage until it was done, and Richard gave both of us DVDs and kind of very wisely advised that we watch it by ourselves alone the first time. And I mean, I don't think anybody heard from me for a few days. It was pretty intense, definitely. I don't know. I cried a lot. It's hard to really describe what it feels like. I think you spend your whole life wondering how you're changing from day to day, much less over a decade. And it's one thing to look at pictures, but to see it like that is, mind-blowing. And tender, it's painful, but not really in a negative way. It's just, a lot to take in all at once. You know, I've seen it like 10 or 11 times now, and it, you know, it's finally getting easier. But it's very emotional, definitely.
Please don't watch it alone when you're my age. It might be the end of you. In between now and then, fine. I'm very glad Lorelai didn't succeed in convincing her dad to have her character die of swine flu. There was one year she just didn't want to do it anymore.
I think she just didn't want to dress up for the Harry Potter thing.
Oh, hey, I was just wondering, did you get in front of the camera at all over the 12 years? And if not, do you regret not having that time lapse for yourself?
Actually, I was asked to be an extra in one of the scenes, a couple of scenes. None of them made the cut, so thankfully I'm not in front of the camera. In the book, however, my sister took a portrait of me, so if you happen to get the book, you'll see a portrait of me in there. But as far as getting in front of the camera, I just did that year 4. I was a bartender or something, and Rick gave me this great line of "What's your motivation?" and all this stuff. I was just a complete extra background fluff, and clearly not important enough to make the cut. So.
And how do you see this experience and this job affecting your work in the future?
It's funny. I definitely take a look at the longevity of projects now. Like, I've been shooting photographs of kids at a Montessori school for about 8 years, and watching that same kind of growth and watching them age, and it's interesting. It really plays on you when you have to have that. And thankfully, Ellar has agreed to continue our project. We shot year 13 last year in May, so sometime coming up, if he allows me, I will do year 14 with him.
So the movie on the whole is kind of this like wonderful measurement of what it is to be human. That carries probably a lot of weight, right, for you in your professional life. Do you feel a lot of pressure now to moving forward to work on projects kind of of substance?
And I think I would feel that regardless.
Sure.
But not. I mean, almost. People kind of ask me that. It's like, oh, how are you gonna like top this? And I don't think I need to. So in a way, the pressure's off. I guess it's like the first movie I was in just won Best Picture, so it's like there's not much like more that I can strive to accomplish as far as recognition, you know. So I don't know, but absolutely. I mean, I feel a lot of responsibility and pressure to only be a part of things that have substance and, you know, communicate genuine emotion. But I think I would feel that way, you know, even if I hadn't been a part of this.
So look for you in like Mordecai too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you promised not to do Texas Chainsaw Massacre 87?
You know, like year 2 or 3 of Boyhood, I auditioned for the Texas Chainsaw remake. And, very wisely, my parents talked me out of it. I wanted to do it, but since I've heard that set was like one of the most hellish sets ever, so I'm kind of glad I wasn't part of it.
And it has to do with a scene or 2 scenes in the movie. There was your mother in the movie. She has an exchange with an immigrant who's working at her house, and she tells him, "You're smart, you should go to school." And then there's a scene later on where he's like, "Thank you for that. I went to school and I'm a manager," all that. Just wondering, why do you think, from your perspective, why was that included in the film, and what was the meaning behind it?
Oh, I mean, I think because she, you know, is underappreciated, and moms kind of are, you know, and she sort of spends the whole movie trying to ease the suffering, I guess, of all of these men in her life, and, you know, is sort of punished for it the whole movie. And I guess that's a role that a lot of mothers fall into. And to be, you know, have that appreciation from someone who's not trying to start a relationship with her is powerful, I think. but I don't really know.
Do you think there's a reason why they chose randomly to have a Mexican immigrant working on her house?
I mean, we live in Texas,
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know. Because a lot of Mexican immigrants do that kind of work and are, put in a place, by whatever preconceptions of society, that they can't rise beyond, this idea of what an immigrant is in this country. But also a lot of people do. A lot of people, come here and start doing work like that and, make very, successful lives for themselves. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
So a lot of times as, little kids, we're into one thing or another and we make decisions off those and change those really quickly. Was there ever any time like you kind of were questioning your role in the movie and being a part of it? And I guess what kind of sacrifices and things had you, or what haven't you got to do that you kind of wanted to do when you were a kid? Or how did that kind of overlap with work balance versus life balance, doing the movie for so long and so many years?
I mean, nothing. Never. I never wanted to, I never questioned my decision. I mean, I was never terribly rebellious. I never had much of a reason to be. I wasn't in public school, so I didn't have that inherent need to rebel against all forms of authority. It kind of, it was kind of fun to have an obligation, something I was committed to, and it's in, I think you hear 12 years and it sounds like it's taking up my whole life, but like I've said, it was a week and a half each year, so it wasn't. I don't think it ever kept me from doing anything else, I mean, yeah. I stopped auditioning for other movies, that's the only thing, but auditioning just sucks, and that's why I did that, so.
Betty Davis had to audition for a movie in the 50s, and she just took her 2 Oscars, put them on the table, and said nothing else. So you're going to be able to take some awards along with you.
It's different now. Auditioning is different now, Auditioning for commercials sucks.
During that week and a half, what would a typical day of filming look like?
I mean, during the week and a half, there was about 3 or 4 days of actual filming, and a lot of times in the morning we would still be working on tweaking bits of dialogue and rehearsing, and but other than that, I don't know, standard, I guess. I think Richard, we did a lot of takes when we first started, and I think Richard maybe became more confident as we went along, so things became more kind of efficient, I guess, as the years went on. But I don't know, we would just shoot. And like I said, it was very, like everyone has said, it's very relaxed, and so it was the rehearsal was constantly going, and the difference between rehearsing and shooting, wasn't that noticeable. It was just kind of something we were all working on together.
And Matt, what other projects do you have coming up apart from the aforementioned shooting of the children? That sounds really bad. Photographing the children.
I have a lot of different projects besides shooting.
Shooting up children.
Yeah.
Omit that comment, please.
Aside from my annual portrait with Ellar, I do a lot of different things. I do a lot of headshots and commercial work. I shoot food. I do interiors. I do a lot of different things. Working on movies is fun for me. If I did it all the time, I probably would have a little bit more of a different outlook about movies, because it's a really long day on set. You shoot things from 3 different angles. You have moves. I mean, like Ellar was saying about the typical day of filming on set, it's actually quite grueling because it's just so boring, to be perfectly honest. It's exciting being on a movie set, don't get me wrong, but doing it day in, day out, it's tough work. It's really tough. So that's why I don't do very many films. I just do it a few, 1 or so a year maybe. And with Rick, it was fun, Ellar. I hope that answers your question about shooting.
Thanks.
So you mentioned right now, what is your reaction to like a huge, spike in attention in your life and your projects moving forward?
Figure out what my reaction is, I guess. It's really exciting, though. I mean, I like making art, and there are a lot of amazing filmmakers out there that I'd like to work with, and I might have the opportunity to do that now. So that's definitely exciting.
Question for Ellar. Are your memories of the film and the experiences going through it still your visceral memories, or do you feel that they have been impacted by the positive reception of the world? Like, we look at your work, I look at a picture and I say, oh, they're making history. Do you look back like that now, or is it still the memory it's always been?
That's the strange thing, is it's become so kind of hyperbolized, and the hype is pretty over the top, but it definitely still feels like something very personal, and it always has, and people ask me, did you know you were a part of something so important? And it's like, it's kind of absurd. I mean, I don't know, it's just a movie, it's just an art project. I think if you set out to make something important, you're kind of an asshole. So I certainly try not. I don't think I look back on it that way. I'm glad that it means so much to so many people. I mean, that's kind of the greatest reaction you could possibly ask for. The greatest reward you could ask for with a piece of art is, beyond people liking it, being moved by it emotionally. It's really, like I said, it's really inspiring to have people be so honest and open about their feelings. But no, it definitely still feels very small to me, and it's hard to communicate that, when people are being so kind of hyperbolic about it. But it's very small and personal, and it feels strange to be in the middle of all this, be in the midst of all these awards and this like ultra glamorous Hollywood stuff, and it's like we don't really belong there. And it feels, kind of like crashing the party. But I think, I think that's great. I think hopefully, a movie like this that is small and is, intimate, and certainly, was not made with any intention of like any of this, to be so recognized and so kind of connected with and celebrated. I hope, it gives people more courage and more opportunity to make smaller, more intimate movies and get them out there. So
Okay, that'll close our Q&A. Just a reminder that over in the corner they will be selling the book Boyhood, 40% off. You can't beat that at all. And I'm sure Matt will be signing them, and I bet Ellar would autograph some of the portraits. Am I committing you?
Yeah,
okay.
I'll be there.
All right. Okay. All right. It's been a real pleasure visiting with you.
Thank you.
You didn't break out in a
thanks for
sweat.
coming.
I did, but I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.